that playing for the whole stream on repeat.
Right. Oh, wow, it's really annoying when the loop just keeps going forever.
We're gonna be like one of those like lo-fi YouTubers, you know? It just has
Right,
like
with always just something in the background. Hey,
something in the
everyone.
background that's basically like this in the background all the time.
I know. Hey.
If like 10 years ago we all like, you know, figured out how to make lo-fi, you know, generic background music, we'd all be rich right now in terms of streaming royalties, right? Like it would be very nice to make that. That's those
Well, someone has
music
done that,
that's ubiquitous these days. Yeah.
Someone
Yep,
has done-
exactly.
yeah.
Someone beat us to the punch.
Yeah. Hi. Justin can't join us today, but he sent over music. He sent over some tracks for us to play and to talk about. And he's very sorry that he couldn't make it. He had a tech thing that was a disaster yesterday, apparently. So they had to come in early today to troubleshoot sound stuff.
Oh, let's
Very
not
sad.
let's not put that opinion out there. But yeah, sure. Okay.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Tell me more. What was the show?
Yeah. Who were the organizers?
We'll probably stop there. We should probably stop there.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, Christina's back, and we're going to talk about Andor episode 7, which was pretty interesting, because there were some new things that happened. I will say, but I think
For sure.
Yes.
For sure. Yeah.
And also, like, I've been talking to a couple people on Twitter who have shared their opinions about the music of Andor, period. And I think it would be interesting to talk about that as well, because there are some people who really don't like the music of Andor, period. And so, or like don't notice it at all. And so, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
I think that's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, and it kind of ties back into like what everyone expects from Star Wars. I mean, a lot of people don't like the show either, so you know,
Right.
different things we're looking
right.
for.
At the same time, I've also heard people who are like, I tuned out of the entire Star Wars thing, and somehow Andor brought me back in.
Ah.
Oh,
I just wanted to
I
say
believe
someone
that.
actually told me that yesterday. So, yeah.
Interesting.
This is going to be a
Interesting.
great psychology case study later in the episode.
yeah, okay. Something to look forward to. Anyway, where should we start? Let's start with Justin's thoughts.
Okay.
So, episode 7 was a standalone episode, according to the creators. And it was sort of like a connective. It dealt with the aftermath of Aldhani, or at least started to. And I found it interesting that we saw some. I think the loose ends that we saw were fascinating, like Vel, and then hearing like Mon Mothma's reaction and Luthen's reaction, and then also, what's her name? The shop girl.
What is her name?
I don't know, but I love her.
Bix.
Bix.
No.
Bix?
The shop girl.
What do you mean
The one who
that's
looks
the
like
girl?
she could come out of Rocky Horror Picture Show. Clea.
Who are you talking
was
about in
trying to
terms
think.
of shop girl? What do you mean?
Luthen's
Shop girl?
assistant.
Luthen's
in the
assistant.
shop.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant Andor's ex that works in the shop, in another shop.
Different shop.
That's
Right.
different shop girl.
I already
A lot of shop girls.
I already forgot. I forgot her name, even though you just said it was
Clea.
Clea. Nice.
Clea.
Yeah, I think she's always been like kind of fascinating for me to watch in the background, like because they kind of show shots of her where almost like I wasn't sure a few episodes ago if like she was an Imperial spy or something about her just seemed kind of creepy in a like couldn't tell which way she was
Which
leaning.
way she goes?
Yeah, and so I guess in this episode we realize that she's actually super radical, like even more. Like Luthen is more radical than Mon Mothma, and then Clea is perhaps even more radical than Luthen, or at least on the same sort of level.
Oh yeah, or like you just, you know, you don't get to see Luthen go outside of his sphere. You know, it's almost, I don't know. I read it as like that they're both like in cahoots and know
Yeah.
exactly what they're doing. So
Yeah.
But it's definitely possible that she's, you know, operating, you know, individually. But
Well, it was, yeah. I mean, I think she is like tied with Luthen, but I just the fact that she like wants Velt off Andor was like,
yeah,
oh, okay.
really intense.
Yeah.
And
Also-
seemingly, oh yeah, go ahead, Xtina.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna, for me, like the thing that's creepy about her is the fact that she's a perfect personification of what the Empire wants its citizens to be like, and that's her role as like, even in the background, she has this like exuding of perfectness
What do you mean?
when she's in his shop. Like, I think that her hairstyle and the way that she holds herself, her facial expressions, she really fits into what a Coruscant person is supposed to be like, but
For
also
sure.
what a Coruscant person who's not special is supposed to be like. Like Luthen's the one who's like big and laughing and haha, and she's just like very still, like a barracuda fish. Like very still back there, and she could, you know, like I mean they have 12-inch beak blades.
Yeah. She does just like stay there and act like a good assistant, doesn't like overstep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And then
good.
she's like secretly
She,
listening in comms in the back. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, she's sneaky.
yeah, I think that's maybe what was unsettling about her in the beginning is that she's like kind of really good at playing that role, and so it's almost like you don't want to trust her, but because she seems like there's something up her sleeve the whole time. But what's really up her sleeve is that she's a Slytherin, really, is what she is. You know, she's like textbook Slytherin. So.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny.
And you know what's funny with Val? I didn't recognize Val at first in that scene.
Oh, really?
Because
Okay.
right? Yeah, I was like, wait, who is it? And then I was like, oh, okay,
had to play it
because
back.
you know, yeah, I mean, because of the costumes and the masks everybody puts on, so well. It's like she really came in and you know changed her whole thing.
I think it's really fun that we're getting to see these characters in like different states of I wouldn't call it disguise, but just like different in their different I guess sort of disguise because a lot in order to be doing their rebel stuff while maintaining like a facade to fit into society and not raise suspicion, they kind of all have like double lives. So
Yeah,
and yeah, so hey Gary 24 fan.
and you can,
Hey
and
Jonah.
it weighs on all of
you're
them
here,
too.
Val.
You can tell.
It does weigh on them. It does weigh on them. And then they all kind of know each other's shadows to an extent. And then they are like interacting with each other both from their, I guess, from their facade selves and then from their, like, let's drop the act selves. Like that scene with Mon Mothma and Luthen in the shop. She's pissed. She's like, I don't think I'll be taking these today.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and as Luthen kind of broke it down for her, like, this is what needs to happen. Like, this is the eggs you got to crack, basically, to get work done, you know? So I think she had a type of that moment where she that's weighing on her. Like, she's trying to make some good happen, but maybe it hasn't fully sunk in that, like, what that actually means, you know? So
Yeah. Well, let us know in the chat what you thought of this episode. And I'm going to now... Oh, good morning. 7 a.m. here in Melbourne is a much better start time. Oh, good.
Oh, really? So that means that last
Was
last
5 a.m.
week,
Yeah.
5 a.m. and Chief Abarak was on our stream last week at 5. Yo, super fans, thanks for
Dedicated.
tuning in. Yeah, dedicated.
Yeah, so, okay. Music. Let me just ask like a kind of a binary question. Did the music at the end of the episode, and this is for chat too, did the music at the end of the episode, like on Niamos, did it take you out? Did it sort of like jolt you out of the story? Did it make you feel weird?
XT?
Which one?
An immediate. I guess I'll just have to say no since I didn't seem to notice that.
Oh, okay.
But
I,
maybe.
For me, I felt it didn't jolt me out of the episode. It made me feel differently than I was feeling about the environment at play already. You know what I mean? Like, I felt like that whole scene was really kind of eerie. Like, the color palette of that whole planet and that beach was really what's the word? Off-putting, is that the word? Maybe is the word. Maybe it made me feel, it made me feel a little uneasy. I feel like that whole beach, it had a very dystopian nature to it. You know, it's you know, and I have kind of some interesting theories. No, I don't have interesting theories. I have what I think is, you know, kind of seems like Andor might be hiding out there, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, kind of hiding out, trying to just lay low. But I also, in my gut feeling, I almost think that he's there for a reason regarding his sister.
Okay.
Because, and the reason why actually is a musical reason. We'll talk a little bit more. But, but anyway, regardless, that whole scene where he's there, it's just like the whole vibe of that beach just looks, it's not like vibrant and colorful. It's like grayish. It's like beigeish. It's like a cloudy, overcast day, right? The whole time. And so that music, it feels a little uneasy. There's some weird, interesting tunings in the synths and the sounds and the timbres they use. Sounds a little sinister and a little bit like lo-fi, bit rate-y, kind of like, I don't know. The whole thing just feels a little bit like washed out. And it made me feel like, ooh, this isn't good, what we're about to see, you know? Like, what we're about to see is not going to be a good thing for Andor, you know?
I like the word washed out.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah, washed out, I think, is the best way to put it, right? It feels a little, yeah.
And I think the scene in general, like not just the music, also just felt like I just wasn't sure. I wasn't sure how to feel about it, like, because it did feel so weird, like, you know, from the conversation with like the girl that was in bed, just going to the store and like the Revnog and the greeny green ones and everything. I was just like, whoa, this is, you know, and he has his new name. Like, it was all just like very jolting. And so there were two kind of like interesting bits of music during the Niamos parts. And as people are alluding to in the chat, how do you pronounce your name? Torye? And Mark, you're correct. That is the same music that we heard in the club.
It's not exactly the same. It's not exactly.
Well,
the same.
it's tuned a little bit differently, but it is clearly like the same. Like, it's not
genre. Well, it's the same tempo, and it's the same drum arrangement, but the
So it's
synth
like
on top
cousins,
of it
perhaps?
it sounds different to me. The synth part on top of it sounds wholeheartedly different.
It sounds the same to me, but just like in a different key. It kind of going through the harmonics.
And we're talking about right when
we're flying over.
When it cuts over flying over, right?
Yeah.
I feel like the chord percussion sounds like
I feel like it's
different to me. Yeah, but I don't hear that I don't hear that chord progression in the first episode.
In the first episode, we're hearing. Just the fifths.
Yeah.
Instead of, which is implied, kind of.
Yeah.
And then
So
in this
yeah,
episode,
it's
we're
like a
hearing it half step up.
yeah, but then there's also a waiting part where it just goes and back down here and back up there and back over there and back up there. So there's a different section that's not played during this sequence. So I guess what I'm saying is it's not the same music. Is what I'm
It's
saying.
not.
It's not like
okay.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not the same track. It's definitely supposed like that's I guess sorry. I'm saying it's not the exact same, but it's clearly like they could be part of like the same song, you know, just different sections or so, right?
And that's
but
what I
like
mean.
it's yeah. So and that's what makes me feel like I wonder if like Andor, because last time we saw Andor in like some type of seedy situation, this music was playing, and it turns out he was there for like not seedy reasons, right? At first when he walked in, I was like, wait, are they gonna show this start the show off with like Andor like just like straight up trying to visit a brothel tonight? But no, he's like there to find his sister, right? And I'm like, so I'm almost like, is he on that planet because he's got a lead on his sister or whatever? And that's why he's like, you know, he's both there to hide out, but he's also there for like ulterior motives. So that's what made me think that is because of this musical connection, right?
Hey, Jeannie,
like,
it's been a while.
Yeah.
Hi.
So that's my thought. But yeah, music is almost the same, you know?
Yeah. I guess this calls into question, or like in the chat, maybe you can let us know too. Do you consider it, I guess everyone has a different threshold for like what the same means, because like it could be in a completely different key and even like a different arrangement. And for me, that would still register as the same. But of course, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the same recording. I guess what it is, it's like, even if it's not the same recording, it is the same. It's clear to me that it's the same song.
It's functionally similar. Yeah, I guess it might be. Yeah. But that's hard to say when you've got score in a
This is why there's
show,
like so many
right?
copyright cases too. So
You know what I mean?
I would say
like
it's-
this. Go ahead, Christina.
I would say it's the same according to which criteria. So then you just have to delineate the criteria, and if the criteria is that it's the same part of the same song, okay, it's the same. If it's like someone wrote like several different things that they thought they could put in a song, and so you've got like a kind of like a little family of cousins happening, or even siblings happening in terms of the closeness of the relationship of the music, and then like if you're talking about to the level of like, is it the same recording? Maybe it's like a good metaphor for me is just like are they twins, or like how close is it?
Right.
Like the word same can be interpreted in many different ways, as you said.
sure. Well, remember in Book of Boba Fett when Max Rebo's band played the Cantina song, but like clearly a different arrangement, clearly not the same as like, but it was it was still the Cantina song, but it sounded completely different, but it was still the same song. But the reason that really struck me, the use of that song, which I mean, even if you look at the soundtrack, it is called like Niamos Morlana Club Remix. So like it's clearly the same song, like according to the composer. But I found it interesting because when we encounter it in the club in episode 1, it is source music. It's diegetic. It's diegetic. It's coming from the club.
Yeah.
And then when we hear just like, it's just like a couple bars that we hear, or like 4 bars or whatever, 8 bars, you know what I mean? 2 phrases or something. When we hear it in this episode, it's part of the score. It's, just when we have that kind of flying, we're going over the water.
Yeah.
And then when we get to the actual scene then the music's done. So like, it's not like the music's coming from Cassian's like a house.
Apartment, right?
Yeah. I feel like this is the only time I can remember, let me know if I'm wrong though, like a piece of like diegetic music moving into non-diegetic music in Star Wars. We've had the opposite. We've had the Imperial March become diegetic. We've had score become source, but I don't know if we've had source become score. And I'm not talking about times where it's like mixed or augmented, like Augies or Yub-Nub, I'm talking about like discrete sort of occurrences where we hear it once as source music and then later we hear it as part of the score. You know what I mean? So
And maybe not this separated.
yeah.
I feel like there's things like that in the Canto Bite sequences that really toe the line, but nothing this separate where it's like you said, like where it starts in as clearly, but then we could ask ourselves, like, was that actually playing at the club or in the first episode? You know, like, you know, we can go down that rabbit hole, kind of like what we did with the
I feel like it really is.
I do too, but I just want it as a way of being like, kind of like, you know, hey, is it? It's kind of like the that long discussion we had about A New Hope with the award ceremony, right? Like, is that actually what's playing there? You know, because otherwise, what's going on there? But yeah, so definitely not this separated. I think, you know, in terms of, and you can only. Here's the thing. I feel like you can only do this kind of thing, not only, but it's more likely for you to do this type of thing in a TV show than a movie.
Totally agree.
Right? Because you've got this like long form, like being able to reference things like that. So maybe that's a big reason why we haven't seen that happen like that before, because we haven't got a lot of Star Wars TV shows. So
I don't know how I feel about it. I'm kind of like, I don't know how I feel. Like, I like the track, but it makes me wonder how, like, I just wonder how intentional it is, rather, you know. Anyway, I like it. It just, I'm not like.
Sorry, I'm jumping in too much, but I that's why it makes me feel like it's purposeful and there's some reason why Andor was there, because it's like, if you find out later that Andor is there for the same reasons he was in that scene, then it's like a symbolic reason that they've pasted that music back, right? Now, if they don't do that, then yeah, it kind of seems in some ways interestingly lazy or something like that. But and then they didn't mention this. They didn't mention this planet before, right? Like in that scene when he's talking to like the main woman at the brothel, and she's giving him information about his sister. Does she mention Niamos or anything like that?
No.
No. Okay, I don't think so either. So.
The other thing that's in common between those scenes, and I'm not necessarily saying I specifically think that he's not looking for his sister, but the other thing that's in common in both of these scenes that I think we haven't seen anywhere else is Cassian being super, super in disguise, like being a completely other person, like with the greenie, like the like the fact that he is in a situation where he's having the little greenie ones, little Ragnog, that is not like his natural personality at all, is one of the things that I see. And I also see that he is not the sort of person that would go to a club because and trying to blend in until he can get in to see someone. So it could also be kind of like Cassian incognito. That's a possibility. And the other weird thing about that, just about his weird personality in this, in a lot of the rest of the show, we get to see people's masks that they put on for society. But this one's weird because we don't really get to see Cassian putting it on. We just get to hear this person in the bed speaking to him and implying this whole other personality that he must have to be maintaining a relationship with her, unless she's only with him because he pays for things. But
right.
That's so true.
I just think that's interesting that it's an inferred mask rather than a perceived mask that we actually
and it's interesting. It's interesting to imagine. Yeah, I was curious about that too, because is it a mask or is kind of part of his personality? Because we get some reference to this in the first couple episodes. I don't remember who it was, whether it was his mother figure or whether it was somebody else, but they were basically saying like, what women have you seen last night, right? Like they made some type of comment that he he's quite, he has a lifestyle in which he's getting romantically or physically involved with a decent amount of people, on a regular basis.
Really?
Which is
right.
Yeah, remember that comment, right? That was like, "What girl are you?"
I forgot.
Did you see it, right, Xanthe?
Yeah, I remember
Does that sound familiar? And that was like, oh, because because when we first see him in the brothel, which is, I'm not trying to shame somebody for we want to be a sex positive podcast here, but when I saw him going into that, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's a character trait that they're showing of Cassian. But then they're like, oh, he's not actually there for that reason. He's there to find his sister. But then they allude to him having, like a romantic history that's pretty active. So I guess now we're seeing him in another situation. I mean, they're kind of making a through line of Cassian through the show so far that like there's like a decent amount of love interest or sexual interest that he has in his life, right? And here's another example of that, right? So I don't know if it's a mask or if that's just kind of like that's part of Cassian's character that he like gets involved with people wherever he goes,
Totally.
So,
Yeah.
He also might think that going to like that's his avenue to finding his sister is connecting with people in brothels, or I'm not really sure. We have no idea what his relationship is with the woman in Niamos, but it just occurred to me that could be part of it too. Like
right.
it might not be because he's actually having fun or anything. It might be
Yeah.
because it's serving a purpose of uh
It's a
yeah.
cover.
Oh, I like what Brian
Yeah, I
just
like-
said too
I like
about
what
meeting
Brian
with
said.
women instead of cat burgling.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That's true too.
Lots of reasons. Plus, I mean, like getting involved with someone is also just a way to meet other people and a way to kind of have an alibi, like have a reason, like kind of looking normal in a place.
Totally. If you need
Yeah,
an
yeah,
excuse, just say that you had the greeny teeny regnogs,
Yeah.
the teeny weeny green regnogs, and your alibi's set.
Yeah. So, continuing along with the number of things that are behind the green glass door.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Greeny green ones we have. The Pizzos.
So
Or
yeah,
is
yeah,
it-
keep going.
Yeah, okay,
going.
okay.
Yeah,
I have a
was just
full
gonna-
list.
Yeah.
I have a full list. I'm
Yeah, I
pulling
know,
up
I
my
said-
list. Oh, you saw it on Twitter.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. What do you mean, of course? You're barely on Twitter.
Well, no, I'm barely posting on Twitter, but I'm
That's true.
always watching.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. We have
I'm always lurking on Twitter and
okay.
Love that.
We have Casa, Marva, Tim, Sandrine, Jazzy, Femi, Brasso, Jeef, Perrin, Edie, who is Cyril's mom, Keef, which is Cassian's new name, Dima, Pizzos, Ferrix, of course, the place, and I feel like the soundtrack also revealed that Bix's last name is something with a double E or something as well.
Interesting. And how many X's are there in
greeny
Bix?
green ones. There's only one X in Bix, but
Okay.
yeah, lots of double letter names.
So, yeah, I was thinking about that. I mean, there are a lot of double letter names in Star Wars to begin with. But, Sheev, Boba Fett, Lando Calrissian, there's,
Not many first names though.
yeah, I guess
Except
not,
Sheev.
yeah. Sheev, yeah, there's a handful. But so I was wondering, like, do you think it's purposeful on the part of the Andor writers, or do you think they're like, putting two letter, or remember Luke, right, from the EU?
Yeah.
Do you think this is a cheap naming trick to make something sound more Star Warsy? Like you just make it with two letters, and then you've got like Bosk, two S's, right? I think there's a handful, like maybe in the subconscious of what people think of a Star Wars name, that double letters might be a thing that it might be an entry point to writing something that sounds Star Warsy. Jabba, two letters, Jabba the Hutt. You know what I mean? So I was thinking about that when I was reading. I was like, I do agree that it's totally like a thing in this show,
Right.
but I'm also like,
it feels like a lot.
but I'm wondering if they were like that's one way you can make it sound Star Warsy. Just add two letters and you're good, So I don't know.
I have another side of that to point out, which is that it's for me, And as you were talking, I had to refine what I'm about to say, which is that what I'm saying definitely applies to the vowels, but does not necessarily apply to the consonants.
Yeah.
Which is that the Star Wars makers are more or less writing in English, and in English, our vowels can mean like anything. You basically can't put the letter O, or that's actually maybe the worst example. You can't put the letter I and know how someone's going to pronounce it. It could be E, I,
Right.
it could be all sorts of things. However, like thinking
Totally.
about like Italian or a lot of other languages, it's very clear when you see that I what it's going to sound like. It's going to be piccolo, P E. It's not going to be E I I. So in so I'm just saying like in English, when you're not really sure how to pronounce something, basically add more letters because we don't have any accents. We don't have any by we like English just
Right.
doesn't have any qualifiers on any of
Yeah.
the languages. So if you want to yeah, that's like Qui Gon Jinn. You've got two different I's in there, and you know, there's probably a way to notate that in another language that offers characters that have things. But I don't know that that can be said for the consonants. So
Yeah.
Interesting.
yeah,
Interesting
just thought I'd
indeed.
say that.
I mean, another
Well,
thing is,
consonants are often indicators of how you should pronounce a vowel, right? Like
Hmm.
you double up consonant after like it becomes, instead of like Jabba or Jabba or something like that, it becomes actually no, actually Jabba is a terrible example because it's not how
you
you
only have bad
pronounce
examples.
that. It should be Jabba actually if you read it that way. But yeah, I guess like yeah, instead of
Yeah.
actually, yeah, in some ways
Like why
these
is
things kind
hut
of
not hoot?
don't follow the rule. Right. Well, I guess because
How about hoot?
it's two T's, right? Because it's like hut or butt or mutt,
I don't know. In
right?
German, it would be hoot or
With two T's?
boo. Yeah, like brute.
Brute has two
Hoot.
T's?
It has one T, but I'm sure there's something similar like
even B2 Emo was adding names to the list of Cassian's lovers past and present. Oh, okay, that's right. And Marva started compiling in
Okay.
an earlier episode. B
And
added Bix. Oh, right, okay. B.
Yeah,
There's another one. But droid names.
so
I
yeah,
guess don't
I
count.
think you're on. I think you're totally onto something, Xanthe.
We'll just
So,
keep watching
you know,
this. We'll just keep
yeah.
keep an eye out for this in the subtitles when they spell stuff. Okay, so music. Music. Let's see. I guess we're kind of going in backwards order because we already started talking about Niamos. So I'm going to play something. Justin and I independently kind of did some recreations of it. So here.
Harmonic sweep, right?
It sounds like it's in two different keys. That's okay. So, a couple interesting
for
things
that.
about that. Well, I feel like there's like three main components. One of them is like the drums, but then the two pitched components are like the bass line or like, the synth pad. And then there's that like whistly thing on top.
Yeah, that harmonic sweep,
Yeah, just going
right?
up the
And it just
harmonic
like
series. Yeah.
Yes.
you've got basically an
Exact-
envelope filter running through it, right?
Yeah. Let's see if I can try this again.
Yeah, if you were to whistle tone, that's exactly what would happen.
You know that Justin's gone when we're showing our harmonic synth sweeps with a violin, right? You know that's like,
That's like the most natural place to do it.
No, I know. I just think it's, normally we have this like scientist genius on this stream that can do all this stuff, but we're like, what do we do without him? Like, get a violin out and do it. No, I mean, that's also why Xanthe's a killer violinist, because you can do that too.
So I'm going to play my version because they both kind of highlight different aspects of it. Then we can compare because, well, Justin sent me his, and so I knew what his technique was. Like he did the he did the sweep, right? And let us know in chat if you want more of an explanation of what that is. But let's. Okay, he wrote. It's me.
We might want to jump in.
Sweeping a filter with high resonance. He said he's pretty sure that's not how the composer made it. And listening to it, it has the effect of it. It's not the same notes, but it's the effect. Let's play it again. Kind of reminds me of like those whistles, where like. So that's from, and so I, like on purpose, I did sort of the brute force version of it to see what notes were being hit.
With 2 T's. Yeah.
With 2 T's, exactly. Okay, let's restart. Let's restart this program. Oh wait, no, let's just export the file. Oh, yes. Okay, just a second.
You know what? While you do that, there's a track. It doesn't sound exactly like this, but it reminds me a lot of in terms of genre and just like the general synth timbres. It reminds me a lot of. It reminds me of the Justice remix of Electric Feel by MGMT. And it's similar in tempo. I also am very curious. This has like a house pattern to it, but I know that house is typically faster. This is around like 103 BPM, this tune. And I believe, what is that, like synthwave is at that tempo. There's like very specific tempo markings for EDM. And I don't know exactly what genre falls into this falls into it. I love some folks that are more EDM versed to let me know about that. But it has like the EDM, the house pattern, which is kick drums on every beat.
Mm-hmm. 4 on the floor.
4 on the floor, as you will. In fact, I'll show you real quick. I won't be able to hear you. I just unplugged myself.
Okay.
But yeah, essentially this pattern here. So 4 on the floor. 1 down, da, da. So normally house, you have 4 on the floor. Boom, boom, boom. It's kind of around here, right? Like, and it's like.
1.
Right, that kind of sound. I probably have like a more like housey drum kit in here somewhere. Something like this. Yeah. Yeah, something like that. Right, you've heard that kind of sound before. But this is slowed down to like 104, like I said, and it's something like this. So we still have that 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 snare on 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and we still have that offbeat on the hi-hat. All right, now I'm unplugging and I'm coming back so I can hear if you've been talking to me this whole time. But yeah, so I'm curious what that genre is.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
well, we were letting you be. We weren't talking over you.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
I will say I didn't Google exactly, but because we were talking the word washed out earlier, I think it also not just MGMT's Justice remix, but the band Washed Out.
Washed Up.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah, also, and so I just decided to look up like what is the genre of Washed Out, and it says chillwave, synth pop, dream pop, bedroom pop.
Yeah.
That's that.
Wow, Washed Out.
Also, Mexican Summer. That's just a
That's
lot
a
of
genre?
interesting sub pop. Yeah,
Interesting.
according to Wikipedia. Okay.
Well
Actually,
then.
that's a label, not a genre, according. So that's a thing.
Oh, that's their label. Okay.
Yes.
I see.
So
What
have that
about
thing, Xanthe.
later?
Oh yeah, I was gonna play something.
Yeah, that was what that was a time filler for you to export.
Oh, right. That's the whole thing. Yeah.
Wait, I didn't export it though. I got distracted.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry. I'm not a good
I'll tell you a quick beach thought, which is I thought it was interesting that so there was like the sort of brown gray color of the beach, and Cassian is trying to look like a normal person, and somehow the stormtroopers all think he looks like suspicious, and that just kind of tells me that because he doesn't look, I don't like the only other person that we really zoom in on is that woman who's drinking a cocktail. She's like a possibly an older woman with very bright pink red lips drinking her cocktail out of a straw.
Are you talking about the one with that alien?
Snout-nosed.
Yeah. The
Yes,
nose.
with a snap, and that's about the only other pair of people that we get to really, see close up in this scene. So I think it's because he doesn't look that beachy,
No.
which is fine. That's a great level of beachy. I go there. Then, then he's immediately a rebel running.
Right. I have to say, like, on top of that, him kind of sticking out. Like, I mean, maybe he doesn't have many options, but first of all, this is like the most stormtroopers we've seen in this show so far, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're at the location where Andor is hiding from the Empire, which so I'm a little bit like, bro, you couldn't have picked like any other. It wasn't your whole thing. Like, we have all the money we want, we can go somewhere and lay low. But he goes to a place where literally, like, if you get caught for like running too fast, they throw you in prison for 6 years. You know what I mean? Like, this is a terrible place to hide from the Empire where there's stormtroopers everywhere, right? I mean, like I said, maybe he just doesn't have a lot of options. Maybe that's the point, right? But I gotta imagine that there's some other place he could have gone. So, also, again, leads me to believe that he's maybe there for other reasons. Because this seemingly is a terrible hiding spot, and he's walking around, like you said, Christina, wearing like an Indiana Jones outfit on the beach, like, so he's definitely not trying hard to not stick out, so yeah.
This is a good point. I thought it very strange he went to a planet with such a presence of stormtroopers, and this is what makes me think he went there to find his sister.
Right.
See, I feel like I agree with, I think it was Chief that said it earlier, that he's looking for his sister everywhere, no matter where he is. So kind of, so I feel like his primary purpose there was to get somewhere out of the way. But seeing a lot of stormtroopers there makes me, it makes me think like it's more, calls attention to how the Empire is, like, increasing their hold.
For sure.
On
so that's what I'm like. Maybe he didn't have a choice, but did he?
Yeah. Anyway. So you can see all those individual notes. And they kind of go in a similar pattern. Up. And so that combined with what Justin did, which had the more sweepiness of it, that was sort of like what that was.
Yeah, with all those added textures.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, so. Cool music, and I don't know, like you said, I don't know if it took me out. I gotta say, I didn't track it at first to be the exact same, or until I listened back, I didn't realize how much it, like it basically is, like you said, the track from the first app. Mm-hmm. I didn't recognize that at first. Did you, Xanthe?
Yeah, immediately I was like, oh my gosh, what's this doing here?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't track that when I heard it. I also it wasn't that clear in the mix, and that because it's now the score, right? So for me, it sounded, new to me.
The chord progression really stood out. The chord progression and the harmonic sweep, like that for me is like really, it was really distinct for me, the first episode. And at first I was like, wait, maybe there was just like a very similar thing in like Book of Boba Fett, and then I was like, no, that harmonic sweep. But actually, that's not the part that actually took me out. What took me out was, and this is Justin's recreation. especially.
See, this is more the
Especially
house
this
tempo
part.
right here.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like that drop. Especially since I think maybe it was like. I can't concentrate while it's
Y'all.
on.
So
I think it's because it was
this
came
is
off
another.
as funny.
Yeah, it's a little funny. This is another example of how the music in this show. I know. I don't know. I know Xanthe, you haven't, but it's so Grand Theft Auto 5. It's like, it's so similar to the music from that game. And we said that the Andor theme is basically, the same. And this all sounds so much like Grand Theft Auto 5, and the color palette of this scene specifically looks a lot like Grand Theft Auto 5, because now we're like basically in actually it's more like Florida, but it's kind of California-y too, a little Venice beachy, so anyway, it's just the whole thing's throwing me through a loop. I'm like, this is so GTA. And this song is an example
See
of
that.
that.
Yeah, I could imagine that. I don't play, but I listen to the compilation playlists while I'm working sometimes.
Really? You just working the
Also,
GTA music?
yeah, I do that sometimes. But yeah, I think what occurred to me, because in a way, like this scene musically didn't stand out to me as the very, very next scene did. And so for me, what then is making, so I think that the reason it maybe took people out is because it was comedic relief. So that you have a chill moment before you get sucked back into the intensity of him getting sentenced, and then Cyril and his fantastic new job. And and the way that they take us out, maybe the beach was a way of taking you out of everything, be kind of like, okay, I'm just kind of, comedic relief vibes. And then the diegetic sound in the sentencing chamber is what brought me back, was there's that fan blowing super loud, there's keys being moved, the judge person is eating and cracking the pistachio nuts and eating them, and it's just kind of like those three things were suddenly like very in my they were kind of abrasive because they came back in. And then we have the visually abrasive and terrifying Cyril at his desk in, the darkness of his cubicle life.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I think like the coldness is like what really struck me about that transition. Like it just all felt so just so cold, and almost like, is this really happening? Like, I thought we were on the beach with the snout guy, with EDM or whatever. I thought we were.
Well,
okay.
We also had some. The first time hearing, like, a good amount of hand percussion in that scene as well.
In the chase.
In the chase scene, there is probably a 10-minute clip when he says part of what and then go run, that there is some darbuka in that scene too. So it's right around like 43:32 when he looks over and then there's people being chased, right? And you get this like right? We get these darbuka jams for a second, making again more things that make this whole sequence very, very different from like the rest of the show.
Yeah, I want to read this comment because I think this is a good point. Niamos is also a tourist attraction, so the stormtroopers are probably protecting the tourists from a hostile native population, or from the people that live there, and that's true. The Empire's probably making lots of money off of that attraction, off of that beach town. Yeah. Take it from someone.
Point.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, was that it? Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
I think that's a good point, and I agree, and I like what Gary 24 fan also said.
Yeah. Horrible
That you
flashbacks
that.
during the cubicle. Honestly, like
Well,
cubicles from hell. That look, those cubicles do
I
not look good.
especially appreciate the way that the supervisor builds up his job and experience. You know,
Yeah.
where he's like, you're gonna like move up and be part of, this family or whatever. I don't remember the exact verbiage, but I've heard it so many times in like corporate jobs and stuff. Like I work for Whole Foods, and they're like, welcome to the Whole Foods family, and you'll start a career here and be part of our like team members share program. And you're just like, Christ. And then like your job is just this monotonous like corporate like soul sucking job, so it's like the verbiage and the way it's advertised like versus the actual experience is so mismatched.
Yeah. I mean, and they really like drove the point home that this was like going to be really boring. Like, I mean, I guess they didn't really, just the names of stuff were hilarious. What are the ones that are? The Bureau of Standards. That was the one that was like the fun one, right? No, that's the one he was working for.
Yeah.
And then there was the PORD, Public Order Resentencing Directive. Oh, that's something else. Oh, gosh, they said something else that was like, weights and gauges, fuel purity. Like these are departments.
Yeah.
Weights
Yeah.
and
Government,
gauges.
man.
Yeah.
I also love that the
Gosh.
interface, he's got like a
Yeah.
knob. He's got a knob that he's like going through his archives. It's one of these Star Wars things. It's just like, how don't they have a touch screen? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how don't they have like a mouse? Like when you think about what they could have created, but no, they've got like, I just love the mismatch of tech. It's kind of like the radios that we talked about, right? Or freaking Rogue One, where they like the only way they can get these plans is on like
Is
a
to get the, like,
physical
flash
data
drive.
disk that you need to get with robot arms that like brings you up the tower to like grab it out of the, you know what I mean? It's just like, I love that they're still continuing this stupid, aesthetically interesting but functionally dumb like technology that they have in this universe. So
Totally. Though, it's functionally dumb according to like our values, but
that's
I
true.
bet that
That's
the
true.
reason that the robot arm was necessary to get that data file is because of how complicated it was. In fact, the person getting the file, it seemed, wasn't even able to be the one who knew which file it was. That's why
Right.
droid, what's our droid's name? Who
K2?
K2SO.
tragically,
Yeah.
yes, that's why
Oh, yeah.
K2SO had to be, looking through things and mentioning that. And then not only that, like, to be honest, if I like, I've also had kind of a cubicle job like that for what, like, if all you have to do is just one little flick of the wrist and that's how you switch to the next file, I mean, that's
That's
pretty
true.
efficient.
That could be
In
useful.
a tragic way, though, because it means your body literally does not have to
Yeah.
move except for you're here, and then
Right.
and then
Right.
you're surrounded by these horrible fluorescent lights, and it
Yeah.
reminds me of the theory that people work harder when fluorescent lights are making sure they're awake. Um,
Yikes.
and so they're just like, okay, great, we're going to surround each cubicle with a giant fluorescent light. Um, it's really quite horrifying. There weren't even
It
cushions
is.
on the seats, and I bet they're not allowed to have them either.
And yeah. And doesn't he have to
Very
like
found that really
does he
offensive.
do, but doesn't he have to, he also has to like swivel from screen to screen. Like I'm looking at it, there's like two screens on either side.
Mm,
And so if he wants to use the one on the right, he has to like move his chair over there and do this, you know what I mean? It's like all of it sucks. The whole thing looks like it just sucks. Um uh, so thanks, Junior. That's
mm.
yeah.
I mean, it makes
Yeah,
sense.
Um
it
Like, I
could
totally
just,
understand. Like, it sounded,
we have to.
yeah. Like, it didn't sound like
Well,
boring in a made up way. It sounded completely realistic and also kind of what we were talking about last week, which is like, these are people in the middle of the chain doing like
yeah.
the kind of jobs that we don't normally talk about in Star Wars. Like this. Yep.
that also takes me
Yeah.
back to
Yeah, exactly. I
very
never thought we would
beginning.
see the bureaucracy that makes the empire go.
We read about it in novels all the time, but we never see it on screen, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, Christina, what were you saying?
Well, in a way that like takes me back to the beginning of the show, since we could go back there potentially.
Sure.
But I we could start towards the beginning. But I really loved the when Cyril's mom is critiquing his outfit. Um,
Yes.
I was a pretty big fan of that, and I also was a pretty so there were three different themes. I'm not speaking musically themes, but three different, I guess, visual themes or ideological themes, which were collars. That whole first sequence is like Cyril and his mom in the collar, and then at the same time, Officer Dedra Mira putting her from the ISB, putting her, getting her like Imperial outfit collar together, and then she walks in to ask for that report from, I wrote his name down. Oh yes, from Attendant Felsonis, and his tunic is unbuttoned at the collar, and so he's an example of a bad collar haver. Cyril is a bad collar haver apparently because it makes him look like he. What did his mother just used the worst words?
It says, I don't
Like,
believe in myself. I'm desperate for approval.
yes, look at me, I don't believe it. Yeah, she was so mean about that. I mean, that's just crazy that that's what getting your collar tailored means in their society. So I liked that collar theme, and I feel like it did kind of start with Cyril's mom, Dedra, uh, and then Attendant Felsonis.
I loved
And
it.
who
I
knew
loved
if
it.
Cassian had, yeah,
It reminds me a little bit of LA fashion,
How
like
so?
where you're like you don't like even at some of the most, you know, like high functions like or dinner outings, like you don't dress up, right? But you still have to like it's like you have to toe this line of being like looking like you're casual, but also everything looking like you know everything is super chic, you know. So it reminded me of that. Like you got to look like you don't care, but you obviously to actually achieve that you have to really care, you know. So which is why I've
yeah, that is
always
often the
struggled
case.
like to dress myself in this city because I don't
Get that.
really care, but so
Question, what do you think it mean? What do you think, like, what was the subtext behind him being like, it's a brown suit?
It's a brown
I
suit.
think maybe I think
Brown
he's
suit.
trying to say that maybe like the color of it and he's trying to say like, oh, it's just a plain clothes type of low emerging from the tunnel. Yeah, I think he's just trying to say like it's just a plain boring suit. Trying to maintain that, you know, the suit itself is not very what's the word, assuming, but she's pointing out like, but you've clearly tailored it, you've clearly done all these things to it, so you're, you know, but he's kind of like, no, it's just a brown suit. So that's what I read it as, but
Yeah, I think a way to like reword exactly what you're saying, James, is to say like he's saying I fit in. Like it's a brown suit.
right,
Like I'm wearing what
Yeah,
everybody
like
else
it's a
is
normal
wearing, and his
thing.
mom
Yeah.
is, yeah, and his mom is like, no,
Right.
right,
He's
it's
like, at
not.
the end of the
You
day,
are
this is a brown
confused.
suit, kind of.
right. That's what I kind of read it as, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
The
Ugh.
way that his mother kind of cuts into him is sort of like, you know how sometimes people who know you really well in a certain way, just like they say some of the most true but hurtful things. I feel like we're learning a lot about Cyril from what his mom says about him, even though like
For
I
sure.
wouldn't say that she's a reliable narrator in terms of like Cyril's own desires. Like just it's sort of like when Mon Mothma is criticized by her daughter, it also is like there's got to be a kind of a hint of truth to that, to like, you know, you just want to show that you are, you know, there or whatever, like you're involved. And so Cyril being kind of desperate for approval I think it's interesting that the metaphor is like in one's clothing modifications. Perhaps I'm reading into it too much, but it feels sort of like the way that parents sometimes don't want their, especially like don't want their boys expressing anything sort of like, effeminate's not the right word, but sort of just like fussiness about like appearance. And I mean, I guess this could apply to anyone, except I think it's probably just not as relevant in the Star Wars universe. Usually we see people like Leia's parents wanting their kids to care more about their appearance, but like with Cyril, like this is the second time he's been picked on for it, right? The first time was like he did the boss, piping, right? The piping or whatever on his I forgot what it is, but like and then I just like that being juxtaposed with Dedra's like Dedra kind of being like the mom almost in that, but you know, in opposite way, showing power over her coworker, telling him to like straighten up. And I think this is the first time we've seen Dedra's full outfit. Is that true? For some reason, the pants really stuck out to me where I was like, oh, I haven't like seen how intense these pants are yet.
Those are
yeah.
I mean,
I didn't notice,
but
sure.
When that's a uniform statement. That's it.
Yeah,
and
like,
what it's making me think is that if you are an elite person who has 3, I don't know what rank that makes her, but she has 3 little things on her plaque. She has
her
3 blue things.
Yeah.
And so she is clearly like an elite. So like if you're an elite, you wear puffed up pants. And then if you're at Cyril's economic status, though, you're expected to like definitely not have any tailoring, have something that's super generic, and maybe even like, because also like his tailoring, it clearly wasn't too decorative. Like some of it was probably just getting it to fit a little better. However, I get the feeling that Cyril is not going to thrive in the cubicle environment for sure. Like, I see him as being someone who is a little like, what word am I trying to say? Like neuro non-normative, neuro non-normative, because I think he probably is on the spectrum in some capacity, and then in terms of how he's physiologically wired. However, in addition, like to contextualize that, he's in this world where his mother, we don't know a ton about how she treats him, but we definitely know that he hasn't learned any emotional control skills. He's not being taught that in his environment. He's in an environment where it's incredibly repressed, and so he's not able to be quote quote who he is, and so he constantly has this. He basically, I feel like, has this intense pressure building up inside him of wanting to express all sorts of things, even just to live. And his bedroom was really tragic. It was like there was literally nothing of interest. It's almost like you're not allowed to have things of interest. Like I like to stare at interesting things. It would be incredibly hard for me to be in a space where there's nothing interesting to stare at.
It was more like a hotel room.
And yeah, even hotel rooms have, I don't know, like some beige art, like,
you can take your beige art.
Yeah, I think that his story is going to kind of talk about somebody who's not like your typical Gryffindor person.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So to me, I feel, and I kind of clocked this. I feel like when we had this original scene where he's being kind of, kind of cut down because he's tailoring his outfit out on Ferrix, and I feel like, and kind of what you brought up is, well, with Dedra with her like MC Hammer pants, and like it seems like what he wants to portray about himself and what he believes in, he believes in like, Law and Order, and it seems like he's like built to be like in the what's the IESB.
The
Like
ISB.
it feels like that's where his story is leading, and that's what he wants. And where he belongs, because the Imperials are all about appearances. Like they're all about, let's make everything sleek and intimidating as possible, right? Like, and that's what he is, and so it seems like that's what his natural, where he wants to go, and where he might not be thinking that directly, but I think it could be very interesting to see how he starts to interface with the and he's going to have some information on Cassian too. So I'm curious if his paths are going to cross.
Excellent point. Excellent
Yeah,
point, Chief. I like the contrast between Cyril and the data processing guy who didn't bother to do up his collar. That moment let us know that Dedra would appreciate Cyril.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
So that's where I'm kind of thinking.
Yes.
I think that him and Dedra are going to cross paths, and he's going to have a lot of like really unique information on who might have, done that event on Aldani. So I'm curious at how that's going to play out. So
although this is a good point too, like I think Dedra might appreciate his attention to detail, but I think Dedra probably wouldn't like if she saw too much individuality in his tailoring and stuff. George Lucas said during the making of the prequels that his theory was that during the Imperial era there was basically no fashion and no individuality.
Do you think it's about individuality, though? Do we really think that's what it is, or it's more that he wants to be the pinnacle? Like it's not like he's like customizing his outfit to a certain degree. He's just making it fit really well and making it look the very best it could possibly look. You know what I mean? It's not like he's got his own flair and tags on it or changing the color of it. He's basically saying, I want to be at my excellence. I want to stand out and do. He seems like a rule follower. He doesn't seem like a rule breaker. That's, I guess, what I'm saying. Like it doesn't seem like he's trying to be an individual. It seems like he's trying to stand out the most within a system that he possibly can. He wants leadership within a system as opposed to.
Well, if we go back to like what Christina said about potential neurodivergence of him. Well, we don't even have to put like Earth labels, but like he clearly like. What he intends to do is not always how it comes off still. So I agree that he's not a rule breaker. And I think that like a lot of people that get in trouble for breaking rules are also don't perceive themselves as rule breakers. Speaking from experience, where as a kid, I never wanted to break the rules. I was so shy.
Yeah.
I wanted to do things as by the book as possible, but like I couldn't even help but like I couldn't help but like break the rules all the time, and I never even meant it. I feel like Cyril might have a bit of that.
But I guess he hasn't gotten in trouble, and that's what he says in this episode. He's like, he hasn't gotten in trouble because he broke the rules. He's gotten in trouble because he's followed them so directly by the rule of the law that the other people that are not trying to do what he's doing demote him and knock him down because of it.
Well, he's broken social rules, though. He's broken unspoken rules, and I think that's
But there's social rules that exist because of people not like him. You know what I mean? Like people that don't want to, and that's what I'm saying is like that's why he belongs in the Imperial ranks, and that's why I don't think he's like striving to be himself. He's striving to uphold the rules and the systems around him.
I agree with that.
Yeah, as opposed to Leia. Like Leia from Kenobi is like, screw your rules. I want to be myself no matter what you tell me. Like I feel like they're two sides of maybe a similar coin, but like Cyril wants to follow that rule so heavily,
and he can't help but sticking out, even though he wants to follow the rule.
Yeah, which is why he belongs in the ISB.
Yeah.
To my extent, and Dedra actually is doing the same thing, right?
Yeah.
She like in some ways, I guess actually maybe not, because she did. Didn't they point out that she like broke some rules or something like that to get information or something? This
right, but she had gone with the Emergency Act or whatever, so she was still right. But I guess,
well, there you go.
But what I recall most of all was from one of the earlier episodes when, she was like, teacher, this is my answer, and he was like, you're right.
Yeah.
But you're right on paper, but the ISB doesn't actually do that. So like she also was by the book, but like Baroque and unspoken understanding that everyone has about what her role should actually be. And
He's kind of a good supervisor, that guy, by the way.
yeah.
He's interesting.
That guy, because it was interesting, like within one of those early episodes, he basically kind of like lets her know, like, don't do this, but then he's like, you know what? Your data that you inputted has been excellent. Like he's like textbook like boss feedback, which is like let them know how they're not, doing what they should be doing, but also like give them a compliment and let them know that you're happy with their work. Like he's like he's not like a textbook evil boss. He's like a pretty good supervisor. And then like he like rewards her in this scene where he's just like, and I don't know, he's kind of like not an antagonistic force for her story at all. He's like very much an ally, which I think is surprising in some ways. Like she's not actually battling against the grain with him. He's kind of like I kind of like their connection there,
I'm seeing some comments that are like, like dress for the job you want. He changed the first uniform to look like the body armor that the others had. Maybe the high collar shows where he wants to be. And and also we have this comment that is, I think Cyril's mother underestimates about him. If he was desperate for approval, would he have obeyed the original order? As Cassian's mother thought he wouldn't care / know about the rebel heist. I don't follow the second part.
Oh, like as Cassian's mother Marva, or motherish person Marva, like I wonder if she, so are you kind of saying that maybe she kind of knew that he might have actually been a part of that?
I don't think she does.
Oh, no, sorry, I totally misinterpreted that. Yeah, that she assumed that he might not even know about the heist.
Right.
Yeah, she's like, you wouldn't even care about it.
Yeah, these people were heroes.
Like, you do
whatever.
know.
You wouldn't know about that. They were heroes.
Totally, but he is like,
He is,
it's just a robbery. He totally does it, even though he knows all about it.
Obviously, yeah.
Reduces it down to the least meaningful possible thing that it could be.
So if we're talking like, if I can just dabble in a little bit of potential music connection making theory, fan theorying,
please,
that no one should take too seriously, but okay, based on their music, I feel like Cyril and Mon Mothma are going to cross paths because they both have this like, oh my god damn, okay, I'm going to put on my backup synth. It's fine. Okay, there we go. Okay, and this is not going to be new to people who have been watching this stream every week because it's come up pretty much every week. So you know. Okay, it's normally on like a synth, and that's what we hear when Mon Mothma is. We've heard it twice now when Mon Mothma exits Luthen's shop, and it feels very like espionage-y. And Cyril's music, well, first of all, like it kind of, they both have this descending like minor scale thing going on. And let's see, Justin prepared a Cyril sad. What did he call it? He calls it sad synth Andor theme variation as Cyril dies inside. So let's hear what that is. Right. Well, this is just the Andor theme, but sad Cyril version.
But without the major sixth.
Exactly. And then he has lo-fi sad boy for Xanthe. He like made it, he lo-fied it up, right? That unstable synth pitch. That's hilarious. He's really milking this. I love it. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. That's good.
That's really cool.
So yeah, just Mon
Well
Mothma, we hear
That's great.
Mon Mothma's also descending scale thing. About 10:42 into the episode. So anyway, that's just my not serious theory.
I like comparing. So I yeah, I'm interested in this concept. So the parallel between Dedra and Cyril, and also now that you're bringing up Mon Mothma and Cyril, and something that Cyril definitely struggles to find someone who can kind of accept him or at least understand him enough to communicate with him in a nice way. Like he is incredibly emotionally driven and doesn't know how to shift emotionally. Like when he's at that when they have that completely botched attempt to capture Cassian, and like his fellow corpos are like dying left and right. He's just standing there in shock for minutes and minutes and minutes at a time, and his I don't know, supervisor, subordinate guy is just like screaming at him, "We have to go." Like that's the only way that that guy knows how to communicate with Cyril, who's kind of like completely enveloped in this emotional moment that's occurring. And so I'm thinking, okay, that happens to Cyril kind of a lot, I think. Like he kind of gets caught up in things and kind of stuck. So who else in the show then could communicate with him well in the future? And so we've got Dedra, who is going to identify with him in terms of her collar, but also in terms of like she has the skills that Cyril lacks in terms of um, emotional control and things like that. And maybe she
Oh
can
yeah.
teach him those skills because if no one teaches him that skill, he can't be in the ISB. Like he can't be in one of those terrifying. Well, they're not terrifying, but I find those boss meetings of the ISB like a little bit intimidating.
Yes.
a
And
little bit.
Same. Same.
I find those.
so
A little stressful.
Yeah.
yeah. And so he needs, if he's going to succeed at something like that, he definitely needs, because his mother clearly has no idea how to help him with that. Like
Well, she's the cause of it.
She doesn't
I mean,
know.
she's doing this thing that parents
maybe.
do, where they do things that cause you to react and form your personality and your tics and your issues, and then chastise you for having those tics because they're the ones they brought them out. Like the reason why he wants to follow the rules and stick out and get people's approval so much is because of the way that she's raised him, and then she yells at him for wanting people's approval. Parents do this quite a lot.
Yeah.
That's
true.
Totally. And so yeah, maybe Dedra is going to be able, because like she I mean, like I don't know for sure that. I mean, have we talked about whether the Empire is super patriarchal in its way of doing things? I mean, it definitely is to some extent. There are definitely women higher up, but if I picture most of the Grand Admirals, I'm not picturing any women. And so I'm sure that Dedra is fighting against a lot of that sort of thing. And at the same time, you just brought up Mon Mothma, who has this role of being, she's also a woman in, there's a lot of men in her circle, and not only that, but she purposely portrays I like when she's talking to her friend, what's his name's not Tim, but it's her friend who's going to help fund Tay.
Yeah, what's it?
So Tay Kolma.
Yeah. So she's talking to Tay, and she's just like, they paint a very clear like the picture of me is very clear. I'm a somewhat indecisive senator who makes various insignificant and maybe even laughable humanitarian attempts. And that's a crafted role. So she is purposely portraying these kind of things that in general are what a patriarchal society would want of someone who is in the ruled class as opposed to the ruling class, so that she can have a secret, personality behind all of that. But maybe I think it's interesting that you bring her up as someone who may interact with Cyril, because I think she also is somebody who might be able to work with him in some way. The level, I mean, she was almost crying when she left Luthen's shop. I mean, her eyes were glittering.
Oh
I have
gosh,
no
that
idea how she
glare
managed.
from her car. Or, oh my gosh, really. She was really, really unhappy.
Yeah, and
It's pretty
I don't know how she managed to like go in and talk to the driver and act like everything was fine in a span of just a
well,
couple of seconds.
I have to say that this cover, it's a pretty niche cover, and like to a certain extent, like, and I guess I keep thinking like, how many times is she going to be visiting the local museum guy before her driver's like, why
Why are you
like
getting so many artifacts?
well, yeah, I guess her husband is like really into all this crap, but as somebody that doesn't have those types of, niche tastes, maybe I just don't get it. But she's like there all the time, So yeah, so keeping it. Yeah, how do you explain why you ran out of the museum, emotional and crying, and not raise any suspicions? So pretty
Yep.
interesting. I was very suspicious.
Uh,
Speaking of Take Calma, of him
Really?
at
Okay.
first, and I was very like nervous that she was bearing so much, because I was like, whoa, how do you know anything about this guy, or like I guess they or like I know she seems like they have a pretty long history, but in the Empire, I almost feel like he's going to betray her. Maybe.
I think it's so
But
excellent that she didn't ever say out loud what she needed the money for. He was like, I still
Yeah.
don't, still don't
Skilled.
know what you're talking about. And she's like, and I
Yeah.
won't, or whatever.
But
I won't mention it.
if he's an agent, she's kind of told him all he kind of needs to know,
Don't touch
in
that.
some way, shape or form. If he's like if he's secretly reporting to the Empire or whatever, like she basically showed her hand enough to the extent where he could sabotage her.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was glad that she didn't go all the way. I'm almost wondering if her husband is actually a sleeper cell rebel agent, and is
Rebel agent? Like,
is
like on her side?
For
actually
some reason, I just like
exactly.
can't see that, but maybe.
I can't see it either, but that would be
If-
quite a twist.
Right, I get that. That's why I'm like, maybe that's gonna be where they go with his character. But yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
more music. Oh,
No, go ahead. Yeah.
so more music. Okay, you're also anxious about Tay. Okay, interesting. I feel like for now I trust Tay, but there was this going back to the Bureau of Standards. We had a little bit of something new, and it went a little bit something like, let's see. There we go. I needed a pluck. It was sort of like,
Yeah, that
it was
pit
like-
stuff.
yeah,
Yep.
just sort of this like very
That was
pacing,
very interesting.
plucky, little, yeah. It was nice to hear some new music.
And what do you think is
Yeah.
the significance of doing something so, in terms of orchestration or even instrumentation, is so different from really most of the way the show is scored?
No, I feel like there.
What do
I
you
feel
think?
like I feel like I feel like in episode 1 we also got some plucky things with the droid theme. It was like it was pitched percussion, but
That's yeah, but I don't know. It like just the tonality and the of like. Go ahead and can you play this new thing? The standards thing.
it's slow. It's slower. It was like just in the background. It wasn't like
Yeah. Something about it sounded, and also it had like it was just a little. It was also just thicker in instrumentation. Like there was there's some triangle and percussion in there as well. It sounded more like to me, I was just like, that's a little bit different than what we've been getting so far. I liked it.
I feel like it was fitting for how like uniform everything looked there, and they were talking about standards and weights and whatever.
Yeah.
It kind of felt like
Yeah.
it went along with that theme. Oompa Loompas. Oh, that's funny.
Boom, oompa loompa.
Doo-ba-doo-doo.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
funny.
For sure.
Let's
Did-
see. What was
I've
you
got
say?
another theme. There's two other. So I was saying the theme of collars was one thing that connected a lot of different people in the show,
Mm-hmm.
and the two other themes were smiling
Yes.
was an interesting, and I wonder if there's any kind of musical connection with the times that. I mean, smiling was actively discussed multiple times in the show, um, and I just thought that that was an interesting. I know I felt like that was a theme. Do y'all have any thoughts about
Oh, it reminded
smiles?
me of with Solo, where Kira's like, smile.
Oh
Ugh.
yeah.
Smile was
That's
much
what
more
I would do
appropriate
when I would
here.
think about you.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah, I remember that callback that
Funny.
nobody was remembered in that moment. Remember? You know what I mean? She's like, that's. You're like, wait, did you say something
Did you
about
say
that
smile before? Was
previously
that
in this
code
movie?
word?
What did I miss something? Yeah, I mean, I think it's like the mask that they keep putting on, right?
Hmm.
The it's everyone's trying to put on appearances in this show. Everybody is, trying to put on some type of. It's very much like Luthen. Literally, the first time we see him smile in the show is when he's
Yeah.
faking the smile on his ship a couple episodes ago, where he does that, which is
Hmm.
the hilarious thumbnail to our stream today.
Yeah.
Yeah, or no, actually no, that was when
Yeah.
he. Oh, so we really see Luthen smile, like in a big way, or laugh in a big way, in two times in this show, and one of them is when he's faking it on his ship,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and then one of it is when he's actually laughing because
yeah,
he
from
feels so
relief.
relieved at the. Those are the two times we actually see Luthen really laugh and open up his emotions that way.
Yeah.
And I think it's
Yeah.
in that moment we get to see Luthen his the most honest when it's at the end of whatever episode that was. Was it last episode?
Yeah.
It was, wasn't it?
Mhm.
It feels like forever ago. Well, I mean, not to mention that these freaking episodes are like an hour long each every week, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, we get to see him in his most honest in that moment. Finally, he can't even help but just let his emotions actually come out and take a sigh of relief because he's not putting up this smile. Versus the last time that he was laughing and smiling, he's like forcing it to be under this whole thing. So it's interesting to see Mon Mothma, like you mentioned in this episode, Christina, like saying like, smile, let's put up a smile, like everything's okay right now, because we need to put up this front right now to
Yeah.
everybody to make people think that everything's fine.
And I like that it was a
So.
constant cue, not just like so often in Star Wars or anything really, you'll know that there is an intention, like, okay, we're going to fake our way through this, but then you don't have to worry about the characters like slipping up on their, directive or whatever. So, it wasn't like she said smile so many times. It was sort of like you never let your guard down. Like, I'm telling you this
Yep.
thing, now remember to smile. Like, remember to smile. Yeah.
Absolutely, because he was not. He was looking like she was. I mean, he was kind of like
Reacting.
he was really reacting, pretty obviously, I thought, in terms of his facial expressions. Like she was
Yeah.
clearly, if you were an onlooker, you definitely would know that she was telling him something super amazing. He was becoming increasingly impressed with her, and he kind of had this like that fire kindle look in his eye that was both. I felt like A, or maybe B, a little lustful, but a little like you could see that he has a lot of ambitious qualities and that he's recognizing that, oh, like this is an opportunity that there, like, no matter how this plays out, I could somehow win at the end of this. Uh,
Yeah.
I kind of saw that in him.
Yeah.
Did anyone catch any diegetic music in this scene? Xanthe, did you hear what's happening in the party
Oh,
scene?
diegetic? Oh, I can't remember.
It was very, very light if it was. Like, very light.
Okay. What was it?
And wow, that was actually like
Oh, literally. Okay,
an
okay.
honest question. Because
I'll
I
have to
didn't,
go
I
back and
couldn't,
listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I was so transfixed
me,
on their conversation.
it's very warbly and not clear in the mix. It's
Okay.
like, So I'm curious if if we go back and listen to that.
I didn't get a sense of any diegetic music, but I could be certainly could be wrong. Now,
There's definitely some type of musical sounds in the back for sure.
Yeah.
During this scene, yeah. But I just
So a couple other like themes or whatever that came up were, well, first, I don't know, I wrote down Clea's power walk in red. And it was something, it was like on synth. It was like, was that 12:53? And that was such a long shot, like, or, several shots where like they showed her walking quite a long way to get to this like, secluded meeting place. Just.
I thought that was all about the path. I like that. That was the other. So this is the final of my 3 themes that I was thinking about the show is paths. So this whole shot, it was her, but it was also Dedra walking on the white halls, going to her various meetings and things. I think it was similar to how the collars of Dedra and Cyril were displayed at similar times. This one, the path. And then there was not only that, but the actual like marking on the ground that Clea found that indicated that she should turn. Like it was very clear that there was a little, I think a circle with a line through it, chalked onto the ground, and that indicated that she should turn or something like that. And yeah, so I got this very path feel there. And then shortly after that were the stormtroopers walking and Cassian having this flashback to when the stormtroopers came in and killed
terrorized.
Clem.
Yeah.
Terrorized. And then at the same time, diverging paths, then Marva is just kind of saying, we're on different paths now. Like, you're gonna have to go, I'm gonna have to stay.
Yeah,
This is
you
the
can't
point
stay
that was
where we
interesting.
diverge. Yeah, and
That
so
was an
this
interesting turn
divergence
of
is
her
happening a lot.
character.
What were you saying, Christina? There's a lot of diverging. Is that
So yeah, there's an inherent, all of these things are where we're getting to see a division that we haven't necessarily seen super clearly. So there's the division that happens between Marva and Cassian. There's also the masks of all the characters really we're really getting to see the 2 different sides of their different masks. And I guess I'm just saying a strong difference between things that are dividing and then things that are assimilated, such as all of the different cubicles in Cyril's new department of standardization. But again, it goes back to this kind of path concept, and you originally talked about this because you mentioned Clea's red walking theme.
Yeah, her power walk. But you're right. Dedra is definitely part of that as well. Well, they were both power walking, I guess.
Well, they just I mean, it cuts from her to walking with Dedra, and there's also a through line of the glass and the mirrors in those shots. And there's a shot where the camera pans up, and you can see Clea's reflection in the ceiling, and then they cuts over to Dedra walking, and then you see her reflection in the glass in the hallway. So there's some type of connection that they're trying to draw between those 2 characters for sure.
Nice. Yeah. That location reminds me of Cyril's long elevator or long trip home, with all the elevator. I don't know what that place was, but it wasn't.
You know what it reminds me of, Xanthe?
What?
You know that it reminds me of Celebration at the.
Oh my gosh, there's so many floors.
At the conference center in
Anaheim Convention Center.
Anaheim Convention Center. There actually is a shot of like the spiral thing that I'm like, is that Star Wars Celebration? I was like, did they shoot that at the Anaheim Convention Center and then just add a bunch of CGI onto it? Because it looked like the exact layout of the Anaheim Convention Center. It's pretty weird. We've got some spam in the comments.
They've been banned.
Yeah.
Oh, another one. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Not adding that to the broadcast. And then the other music was, oh my gosh, when the Star Destroyer flies over on Aldhani. Yikes.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's kind of some. And then it was like,
And of course, those.
it was like this gnarly chord that was building. Oh man.
Can you play the first chord and then the second chord?
Sorry.
So that's
So it's
the
the same,
Imperial. It's the Imperial.
Imperial chord
thing.
progression.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it was like, I love how it just like loomed. Let's do it again because it's just, it was so chilling. She's like looking up, right?
Yeah.
And then this like gnarly chord builds and then it swells and then it goes right into the next scene. I was like, ah.
And so we haven't got a follow up on
Xanthe.
on the commander from last week.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Oh,
Lieutenant Gorn.
Gorn. So we haven't got a follow up on Gorn yet. So still holding out.
I think he
I'm
did.
not bringing all of you to Disneyland. They did. I mean, Val mentions that she thinks that he's dead, and saw him. So she says that, but we haven't seen them. We haven't gotten like the fallout from the base. Of like in terms of going back and seeing what's going on with them. So I'm curious. So we'll get that.
Yeah.
Still holding out for it.
We will
yeah,
get
we
it.
just had that mention that everyone at the base had been replaced, everyone, and was in processing of interrogation.
There you go.
I think that's such an interesting strategy.
Yeah. Yikes. The last two notes I have are, well, three. One, this is what revolution looks like. Two, we saw the probe droids, right?
Yeah.
Those are really cool
Yeah.
to see.
And a mouse droid too.
And a mouse droid, that's right. Oh, that was so good. And
Yes.
then, Cyril kind of like jumping over it. Oh yeah, love the mouse droid. And then, two more things. Was Bix wearing a puffer jacket? That kind of looked like a North Face jacket or something.
Yeah, it definitely looked like kind of not super Star Warsy,
Yeah.
It was like, is she just wearing like something out of the North Face catalog here?
Of all the characters, I think Bix is the one I'm still like, okay, waiting for a little bit more, waiting for more, waiting to understand why she's here. I'm sure we'll get it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like,
Yeah, because she has some connection to Luthen and has some reason for selling him stuff. I don't know if it's just monetary, or if she's got some type of, there's other ways I imagine she can make a buck, so I don't know if she's some reason why she seems to be doing these kind of secret operations, right?
yeah.
So.
Yeah,
think-
sure. Speaking of droids, Bemo's sad sounds when Marvin and Cassian are discussing how Cassian has to leave.
Oh yeah.
I did enjoy Bemo's little sounds there. It was just I like to think about how it is that that a droid communicates sadness.
Yeah.
Bemo did a good job of it.
Yeah. And I like how Marva, like, the droid will just say stuff that Marva isn't ready for the droid to say. So Marva's constantly like, shh, shut up.
Yeah, totally.
I do like
There's another good
how
moment.
segmented the show
There you go.
is in comparison to other Star Wars media. A lot of times in other Star Wars shows and Star Wars movies, it's kind of like there's like the bad guys over here and the antagonist over here, in some ways. The protagonist over here. And this has got like so everyone is there's so many characters and they're so spread out and they're juggling it so well. Like just the fact that the main quote unquote droid of the show isn't really like Cassian's droid. You know what I mean? Like when we have in the movies, it's like R2D2 and C3PO are like always following one of the main characters at all times, you know? And so they're like a integral part of the story. Or like K2SO is like with the crew all the time. Or like what's her name? In Solo is like
L3,
with the crew
yeah.
all the time. Yeah, and this droid is kind of like, it's kind of interesting that, because you sometimes from a marketing perspective, you think about it like, okay, this is the new hot toy that they're going to try to market and pawn off to everybody. And that's kind of like what this droid could be, because it's a cute droid with its own little quirks, and it looks unique and it looks cute. But they're kind of like not using this droid the same way the other. It's kind of like we only get to see the droid when we go back to Ferrix with Marva, right? And it's like, so I don't know. That to me is just another testament of like how different this show is like they're not doing some of the same formulaic things you'd expect from a Star Wars show, because the cute droid is like a complete side character, like a very much a side character, and not like in your face at all times. Like that's how I feel about Dio and Rise of Skywalker. Is like Dio feels like they were just like, here's the new freaking cute droid, and we're gonna throw him in your face, like so that you'll go out and buy this freaking thing. That's basically a trumpet mute on a wheel.
So true. It is
right?
a trumpet mute.
Anyway, it is a trumpet mute. So anyway, I kind of got off a tangent there, but yeah, I think the droid being not in your face all the time has definitely resonated with me for sure.
They also mentioned it as a terrorist attack, so I guess some civilians were killed. You would not call an attack on a military base a terrorist attack. That's very true, and it does go to show that, like, well, what happened on Aldhani, like, Mon Mothma's not happy with it, not only because it means that Palpatine will, like, really do some shit now, but, like, also, the Aldhani citizens are not spared from this, like, the aftermath. And so
all of them had been captured as well.
Yeah, and I think they mentioned, like, they mentioned a number or something, and it was not a good number. So, yeah. My last note was Wolf Yularen.
I don't know if that's like,
Yes!
I don't know if that's a rule, by the way.
What?
In terms of the way somebody might convey a terrorist attack against, I think depends
That's
on
true.
what group. Yeah, I don't know if that's like a hard and fast rule, in terms of, I mean, somebody might want to discredit a militant force by calling them terrorists, as opposed to calling them like an actual, opposing force, right?
Yeah.
You might, so
So, I mean, I agree with the first
I
part.
hear what you're saying, but I don't know if that's like a for sure rule.
Yeah, I'm thinking if, like, a U.S. military base were attacked, I think I think it would be called a terrorist attack by a lot of people.
It depends on who it is and how it's carried out, but
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess the point is that we forgot to mention that civilians were also involved, or killed.
But they're also I think they're also trying to like convey to the public that these are people that mean them harm, right? These are not people. These are not a force that you should side with. Mm-hmm. This is a group of people that are a threat to the safety of civilians. So I think the point stands, which is when you call a group of that does something like that, a terrorist group, it's telling the public these are people to be feared and people that you shouldn't side with.
Yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not even called insurgents, which is probably what they would have been called from military personnel speaking to military personnel speaking to each other would call them insurgents or rebels, but they're making it very clear that the media is going to portray them as terrorists.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Well, anyway, that's about all the notes that I had for today.
Nice.
Continuing to be just engrossing and just like engaging and I don't know, just enchanting. What other N words can I use to describe this show? But it's very much it's a breath of fresh air in a lot of ways, and that's not a dig against any other Star Wars shows we've been watching, but kind of feels like how I feel about Visions in some ways, which is like there's a lot of things that I welcome, that I'm like happy to be seeing, and I feel just I almost just feel so I'm almost like it because I'm just so surprised by it every week.
Yeah.
And maybe if we get a lot of shows that are like this, the charm will wear off, and I'll be like, oh, Star Wars is just kind of like this now. But for me, I'm just every week it's almost like I've got a level of disbelief that I'm watching like something that is, quote unquote Star Wars. And I used to feel more precious about that years ago. Like when I first saw Rogue One, I think I said that was my reaction to that movie. It was like, this isn't Star Wars, it's brooding and it feels blah, blah, too serious, blah, blah, blah. Now I've like, in some ways I've had my heart broken a number of times over the last 40 years in Star Wars land that I'm like, nothing can break me anymore. Now I just welcome the weirdness. So I guess that's where I'm at with it. I'm like, this is awesome. And it's so weird that they're doing this kind of thing. And the music is so weird. Because of its again, Xanthe, have you watched freaking Blade Runner yet?
No,
you haven't.
No.
So watch Blade Runner 2049.
When James says to watch Blade Runner, he means the second one.
Yes. I mean 2049, because I would say that this show feels the most like that movie. That movie feels so much like this show.
Interesting. See, here's the thing. I don't
Would you
normally
agree,
like shows
Christina?
like this. Like I
agree.
I wouldn't like readily want to watch a show that's like a movie that's like this show.
But Blade Runner 2049 is like all about like what it means to be human and like how AI intersects with that conversation. And I've heard you talk passionately about these topics all the time.
Sure.
So I'm like, why haven't you
watch
watched this
I will
freaking
watch
movie?
I will watch it. I've seen the original Blade Runner.
Yeah, and it's kind of
The context that's similar between both of those things is also that in both Blade Runner and in what currently exists of Star Wars, there's already a world. If anyone's been kind of tuned in, they already know that world. So then they're able to make a movie or a show that goes deeper into philosophies of what it's like to actually be in that world. Meaning that Andor, we know so much about the Star Wars universe that now we are getting to see what it's like to be a working person in in various sectors of the Empire, and and in Blade Runner, kind of a similar thing. It's like we kind of have even the same characters to a certain extent, and so there's a lot of art like knowns, and they don't have to do as much exposition, and so they're able to then go into the things that take a little more depth and are in a way less interesting in a like to kids, for example. Something that would be harder for somebody who hasn't already spent time thinking about what it means to be human.
Right.
I will watch it. That sounds compelling. What you just said. So anyway, thanks everyone for joining us to talk about Andor episode 7. And then next week, hope you can join us to talk about Andor episode 8. Yeah. Oh my gosh. In the last third of the season. Can't believe it.
Oof.
Already.
Yeah, well, we got 3 episodes in
true.
the first week, so that's
true.
why it feels that way. You know.
We're like halfway done then, in terms of weeks.
Right.
Yeah. So, on that note, goodbye from all of us and from Justin, I know, who is very sad that he couldn't be here. And so we'll give you some exit music on the way out.